and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Stashew. My illustrious co-host Eric is not here again. However, I am joined by everyone's favorite Canadian filmmaker, and maybe not everyone, but definitely mine, Mr. Matt Campagna.
So think of it as like an upgrade from Eric.
You know what? I mean, he's not here. We're still talking about the latest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're taking a break from Mike White March to catch up with the MCU. Where's it at, folks? What's coming next? Because this is the final film before Avengers Endgame. That's right, we're going to be talking some Captain Marvel.
So, Skrulls are the bad guys. And you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
Your life began the day it nearly ended. We found you. With no memory, we made you one of us. So you could live longer, stronger, superior. You were reborn.
I keep having these memories. Something in my past is the key to all of this.
You know how to fly this thing?
We'll see.
That's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Would you like to know what you really are?
I think I had a life here. What aren't you telling me?
You've come a long way, but you're not as strong as you think. This war is just the beginning.
I'm not gonna fight your war. I'm gonna end it.
Aren't you the cutest little thing? Aren't you cute? And what's your name, huh?
Fury.
What's cute? I'll be back.
Man, oh man, let's do it.
Woman, oh woman, sir, how dare you?
Sorry, person, oh person.
Yeah.
Human, oh human.
So, film is directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck. It's written by those two and was going to destroy this name. Geneva Robertson Dwart. It stars, obviously, Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson in a very de-aged role. Ben Mendelsohn, and film centers around Brie Larson as Carol Danvers trying to find out who she is and why the Skrull are possibly trying to kill her. It's an origin story, folks. And as much as I enjoyed it, it definitely feels like an origin story.
Well, it's fascinating to me that, Kevin Feige years ago said that Marvel was done with origin stories. And when it comes to Black Panther and when it came to Spider-Man, they managed to make those films without being origin stories. And they were great. And then they made, of course, Doctor Strange, and that is a straight-up origin story. But I think when they came to do this, they wanted to at least pop the origin story inside out. And it was nice to have it not go chronological. It essentially began with a fully powered hero. And we got to watch how that happened as she learned how that happened. It's a different way to approach an origin story, but it had originitis all the way.
Yeah, well, and also don't forget they also did an Ant-Man origin story.
Well, it is. But they've never done a movie that's the origin of Ant-Man,
which is good
because they did a movie that's the origin of the second Ant-Man, but never really told you about how Ant-Man begins.
Right.
Because we've never seen that cool retro '60s movie about de aged the whole time Michael Douglas as Hank Pym.
But let's be honest.
I would watch the shit out of that movie. It would be amazing because we'd also get Michelle Pfeiffer. I'd be beside myself.
But let's be honest, Marvel. If you're looking for Ant-Man Begins, you've come to the right place. Ant-Man Begins. Ant-Man. Boy, that's almost like it's a title of a really shitty Batman movie. Almost. Is it
maybe the best Batman movie Chris Nolan ever had a chance at making.
But still a bad Batman movie.
Yeah, but still not a great Batman movie.
Oh, jeez. We had to rag on DC somehow. I just think it's unavoidable.
It had to fit in there.
You put the two of us in the room together, and it's just inevitable.
And I think it's pent up from when we didn't get to talk about Aquaman.
Oh, dear God.
But you know what? I think we're doing everyone a favor by not dwelling on Aquaman.
And you know what? As I sit here, I put some water in a cup before I came up here to record this. It's sitting in a fucking Justice League cup that I got from my local movie theater. And every time I look at it, I just think, it couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch of folks. It really couldn't have. But let's talk about Captain Marvel, shall we? So, this film definitely has origin story-itis almost all the way back to, Iron Man and Captain America and Thor problems.
Well, here's the thing that I think Captain Marvel did better than any of those. Because the first Iron Man movie, he's fighting another Iron Man. The first Thor movie, he's fighting his brother. Couldn't be more of a twin if they tried. Ant-Man, oh my God. Yellow Jacket couldn't be less of a character because he's not actually a character in the comics. He's just Hank Pym gone crazy. They do this thing, and unfortunately Black Panther had it too, where the evil twin is the villain. But in this film, that was not the case, and I appreciated that. It didn't have that evil twin, boring, Red Skull is Captain America gone wrong. This was great. Captain Marvel didn't have to fight evil Captain Marvel.
Yeah, and that is good, and I also do we probably should mention we're gonna talk spoilers here. I mean, if you haven't seen it, look, I'm not gonna tell you to go see it. You're probably gonna have seen it because if you're an American moviegoer in the 21st century, you keep up with the Marvel movies unless you just go see Avengers movies, which, okay, I mean, you're probably going to still be a little lost as to who this character is, where she came from. You might just read it on Wikipedia, but we're going to talk spoilers.
Well, and honestly, if you have money, chances are you gave it to this movie last weekend because it made more money than almost any other movie in its opening weekend, and that's great. It's in the top 6, I think, worldwide. It's in the top 2 in America.
Is that surprising, though, at this point? I know the whole thing with Black Panther and Captain Marvel, it's kind of these tent poles for diversity in film, but they're also Marvel movies. These movies are crazy profitable regardless of what they are. I'm not trying to downplay it, but at the same time, it's just these movies are going to be fucking success. It's like saying Avengers Endgame isn't going to break box office records. If you don't think that, people, the last one did, and that was the cliffhanger movie.
Yeah, I mean, a Marvel movie starring another white guy always breaks records. So if you're going to activate the Marvel movie audience and on top of that get women excited, or on top of that get people of color excited who wouldn't normally see a Marvel movie, but this one speaks to them, you're investing them into the Marvel universe. And not only are they going to come for that movie, they're probably going to show up for the ones after that.
I am curious, because we're not really talking about the movie, we're talking kind of more the social aspect of it. I am curious, because you mentioned that about, women and people of color. I am curious where that converged on, those people weren't going to see it unless it was that. I'm curious if that audience sticks around, or if it's just with Ghostbusters 2016, by the way, Matt, a movie that has been effectively retconned out of existence. Sorry. I know, it's okay. But
man.
I know, it's okay. It's not my choice.
I love plenty of movies that have been retconned out of existence.
I know, it's been retconned out of existence. But with something like that, do they stick around? Do the women, do they keep watching Marvel movies? Were they? How many of them? I want to know the number of how many people weren't before and are now, or didn't before but did and stuck around. Because I honestly don't know. It's an interesting
They keep breaking a new record every time. The first Avengers movie to ever have Black Panther in it made made even more money than the previous Avengers movie. And now the first Avengers movie to ever have Captain Marvel is likely going to do the same thing. So it's kind of hard to put causality into correlation, but it certainly seems like there's a halo effect. Yeah.
Yeah. What I just don't know is like, is it because it's just another Marvel movie that keeps coming out that it's making a lot of money? That it's a snowball that's gaining more snow as it rolls down the hill anyways? Or does some of that have an effect on it? I would like to think both, but there's a cynical side of me that says it's just a Marvel movie. And of course more people are going to see them because there's more people coming of age who care. There's more people who are getting invested in the movies. I mean, that's also part of it. And the crazy thing about all of this is, it's these movies, there hasn't really been a flop in a long time. In a long time, they have underperformed.
The they've had is the Incredible Hulk. And
right.
I mean, that was a creative disaster as well. So the fact that it came together so poorly and was a movie that was so poorly received, I mean, it didn't do really worse business than Ang Lee's Hulk. It cost a bit more and made a bit more. So it kind of did the same mess that they got out of Ang Lee's Hulk. But, they recast and moved on, and the Hulk has been amazing and everything ever since.
And again, I'm one of the people who will defend that initial Hulk movie. I actually like Ed Norton in the part. I don't think Ed Norton would have worked in the ensemble cast they have now.
No,
but
right.
I do like him as the Hulk in that movie.
Yeah, he's not bad.
And William Hurt, obviously, the continuity's there. Whether or not they want to admit they recast him, they obviously recast Terrence Howard as well, which I think, again, was a smart move because Terrence Howard is supposedly a fucking nightmare to work with. So good on them. But let's actually talk about the film a little bit. So I liked it. I didn't love it. There's a lot of problems with it. But there were going to be problems in a film that's an origin story that of a character that the movie-going public that aren't the crossover comic book fans aren't going to know. So they have to handhold a lot of what's going on in the film.
Yeah, so it was interesting to introduce her the way they did, with her power set a bit crippled and wearing an inhibitor to keep her under control, because she is the most powerful energy absorber in the Marvel universe. So she's the closest thing to a god you're going to find.
She's Superman.
Yeah,
she is essentially
Superman.
not super. She's Superwoman. No, she is the actual equivalent of if Superman existed in the Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she has the power set given to her by an alien, whether it's in different origin stories she had historically. It's been directly passed to her from an alien, or in this case, and moved to her from an alien invention and accident.
Which I felt was a little, it kind of downplayed, the importance of it in a way, right?
Oh, I don't know. I think the very fact that her power is energy absorption makes so much sense that this happened by having an immensely powerful weapon explode at her. So I think it makes way more sense than what they did in the comics in the 60s and 70s, where she's hit with the Kree, after echo from another explosion, and it comes off of Mar-Vell and gets to her. I think that would be pretty boring, because that would mean Mar-Vell had those powers too.
Would it be kind of like Shazam? Another awesome-looking comic book movie coming out soon?
It would be a little bit like that.
It is a little Shazam-esque, right?
The fact that they're both called Captain Marvel makes it even more amusing.
Sir Mar-Vell, 2 words.
Oh. So funny.
Yeah.
Although, one thing I found interesting in this film, in previous ones, they hang a lantern on somebody named Ant-Man. They proudly say that I am Iron Man. One of the
best moments still in the MCU, by the way.
They flaunt someone as Captain America, but in this one, there's never a time where her character is called Captain Marvel, which is interesting, because in previous movies, they pull that off. Even Tony Stark dubs Rhodey War Machine. These names come up.
If they had said, you're Captain Marvel in the movie, it would have been I think it would have felt out of place, don't you?
I think there would be a way to do it where the idea of what Mar-Vell was doing is given to this captain.
Right.
There's an elegant way to do it. And in fact, in the comics, there's a beautiful exchange between Captain America and Captain Marvel in 2012 when they give her this new suit similar to the one that she has in the movie. Because previously she was wearing essentially a onesie swimsuit and a sash.
Needless to say, it was not in this film.
No, that would not have been really.
It would not have flown with the. It would not have flown with the message that the film is trying to convey, which is women are strong and, you know, they need to, you know, from within, the strength comes from within. Having her running around in a glorified bathing suit ain't the way to do that. I mean, you could make a case.
No.
You could make a case, like a really circular case, but the general movie-going public would be like, well, she's just a sexy lady in a swimsuit. Yeah, and that's what was avoided, thank God.
Yeah, and thank goodness. I mean, hopefully they find a reason in the future to just have her hanging out at a pool wearing a black swimsuit and then puts a wrap around it, and you get a little sight gag out of it.
I mean, but I wouldn't complain about that.
Film, right?
I'm just saying.
Hey, she's well cast. I think she's
Brie
great.
Larson is a fantastic actress, both from a physically attractive standpoint, because you need someone who looks the part, and Brie Larson is also a very talented actress from a technically sound actress standpoint.
Yeah, you don't often win Oscars by being terrible unless you're Rami Malek, and I feel
or wearing a mouthful of prosthetic teeth that make you sound like Dracula.
Yeah, I mean, just often the people who should win the Oscar are simply the people who put the makeup on. Like Moonface Man last year, it shouldn't have gone to Gary Oldman. It should have gone to his makeup department.
Well,
but the cool thing
at least Gary Oldman was good in that movie.
Yeah, that's true. The cool thing for me about this film was that there was no love interest. It did not require anything that previous even male-centric films and certainly female-centric films have often required. Whether it's Pepper Potts or Steve Trevor or whatever, Natalie Jane, all of these characters have had a love interest, and yet they managed to make this brilliant story happen with an emotional connection to a real good friend and her kid. And I thought that was a really great choice and a cool execution of that. Because, you know, Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman could not be more boring. He's lovely, but just the trope of him couldn't be more boring.
Can I say something about, because I think that this is inevitable here, right? And you opened the door and now I'm going to kick it down. This is a better film to show what it means to empower a diverse group of people than Wonder Woman was. This is
it's a better movie.
Yeah, this is a much, but I'm talking about from like it's an all female, this female. I get it. I understand all of that and the importance of Wonder Woman, but this is a better movie if you're looking to empower someone than Wonder Woman, because it leaves out parts of the story that aren't necessary, like a love interest played by Chris Pine, who was criminally wasted in that movie. And Brie Larson, by the way, is a better actress than Gal Gadot. And if you think I'm wrong, go watch Wonder Woman and tell me how good she is, because playing a fish out of water could have been played by anyone. Not everyone has the quote-unquote look of Wonder Woman, even though I would contend Gal Gadot doesn't really look like Wonder Woman anyways, but she was forced into the Wonder Woman costume because we need someone who's kind of tall and sexy, but doesn't really look like what I consider Wonder Woman to be, which is fine. But Brie Larson hits the nail on the head in every category.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at who the character of Carol Danvers is, and she's someone who joins the army at, a reasonable point in her life to do so. And so she's not going to be a hardened warrior in the way that someone like Diana would be. Diana should be like Leonidas from 300. She's been bred since a child to just murder.
She's a warrior queen, for fuck's sake.
That's what Amazons do. And so the fact that she's a beauty pageant winner really kind of misses the mark. It should have been someone like Gina Carano, who you believe could drag David Thewlis to the mat and kick the crap out of him.
And maybe don't have David Thewlis as the villain to begin with. But that's a different story.
Well, you know what? David Thewlis was fine until he turned into Ares.
Well, that's my point. That's my
funny little nose out the window.
That's my point, Matt. He was great until he had to be the villain.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, speaking of villains, so spoilers, in this film, there are the Skrull, but the Skrull are kind of the
we become sympathetic with them.
They're kind of red herring.
Yeah.
They're the MacGuffin of the film, because it turns out the Skrull actually aren't bad, and that surprise Jude Law, who, I mean, We should have seen...
He was obviously Yon-Rogg from the beginning, as far as I'm concerned, and I thought Benning was going to be Mar-Vell. As soon as I saw her haircut, I was like, yes, that's obviously female Mar-Vell. Brilliant.
But as soon as we saw Jude Law cast in the film, we should have known that he was going to be the villain, because they always get a second-tier actor, like, not second-tier, but like second highest billed actor in the film is normally the villain. I mean, look at most of the, I said, except for maybe Ragnarok, but like even then, like Cate Blanchett is the second build.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the second build actor is normally the villain if it's someone who's new to the MCU. So it's not surprising, but he's good.
I think he was a brilliant red herring, because he gives you everything you expect Captain Marvel to be from the 60s. Because Mar-Vell was originally a dude, and he was, you know, a 60s, he was everything you'd expect from a 1960s superhero. He was Superman. And it's fascinating that they managed to give us a good red herring like him. I mean, you even see him wearing the Star Force uniform. Like, it was a perfect red herring. And I've got to say, I never, ever, ever have enjoyed Ben Mendelsohn in anything, because I've always just found him so detestable, it takes me out of whatever he's doing. And maybe that's perfect casting. I don't know. But in this, I adored him. That one moment where he's sipping on the Pulp Fiction soda pop, and he all of a sudden becomes a wonderfully sympathetic, funny, charismatic character. It was the perfect scene to do that turn. It was brilliant, I thought. He was a really, really great casting choice, because I walked into it expecting to hate him, and I adore him by the end of it. And I think I have a whole new lease on Ben Mendelsohn as a result.
Well, let me point something out to you that really needs to be mentioned here about Ben Mendelsohn, because I knew we were going to get to it at some point. The poor guy, and nope, not poor really, because it's his choice. The guy in the last 3 years has essentially become, oh, we need a villain for a movie. Let's cast Ben Mendelsohn. Ready Player One, Robin Hood, Rogue One, for fuck's sake. Mm-hmm. He was actually good in Slow West, which I know most people didn't see it. He was also in The Dark Knight Rises, don't forget, but he has essentially become, in like 3 or 4 films now, big high-profile films, just, you know, the guy you go to for like a generic villain. And that Robin Hood movie, he fits the bill. Ready Player One, he fits the bill. Rogue One, he fits the bill. It's not creative. It's not exciting. They're underutilizing a great actor. I mean, he's a fantastic actor, and he is not being used well in these movies that he's been in.
And I think that's the reason it's such great use of him here, because it seems like that lazy casting again. And then it's turned on its head. I think in the way that they use Henry Fonda, that Sergio Leone uses Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West, be this surprisingly horrifying villain after you saw him play Abraham Lincoln. This was getting to watch the guy who you're expecting to be a boring villain turn in a charming, marvelous, sympathetic performance for a character that actually is one of the heroes. And I think that was just a brilliant masterstroke of casting.
And totally, again, like I mentioned with the thing with Jude Law, with casting, they cast Ben Mendelsohn, and that was the assumption, that he's just going to be the villain. And again, like you said, it really works in the film's favor. I think the chemistry between Ben Mendelsohn and Brie Larson is good. I'll tell you what, and this is probably you're probably gonna disagree with me. Samuel L. Jackson, I could have done without him. He was okay. He was okay. He was like okay. I mean, I'm biased because I'm not a huge fan of Sam Jackson anymore, because he kind of just does the same thing every movie now. And when it's a Tarantino movie, it's like dialed up to 11 of just, what do you want me to say, Tarantino? How many N-words in this movie? Like, he was better in this movie than I've seen him recently, but like a movie like The Hitman's Bodyguard, like stuff like that, like that's all I can think about now with Sam Jackson, is like him just playing himself, hamming it up because he knows that he can just play himself. His chemistry with Brie Larson was good, but like it didn't, I don't know. It was better than I was expecting it to be, and I wasn't like hating it every time he was on screen. But again, like for me, I'm just kind of over Sam Jackson, and I know that's pretty a controversial thing to say.
I'm going to disagree with you 100%, and this is why. Nick Fury has always been a plot device and never been a character. He has no defining traits. He is in no way an interesting character, and it's often because he is nothing but a cameo appearance or a puppet master or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, he's been exposition in the last couple movies.
He has moments on camera when everyone else needs hours. And so I think this was the one and only time Nick Fury's been a character. and I enjoyed every minute of it. I thought the de-aging was exceptional. I think it is unfortunately very clear from the performance capture that that is a 60-year-old man's body, even though it's a 30-year-old man's face. But I think it was I think they did a really great job of making him into who that character needs to be at that time. And I loved his buddy cop charisma and chemistry with Brie Larson. I thought the two of them were just great together, and I'm delighted to have seen that page in the Nick Fury story. And I think, I'm comfortable knowing that I have a complete idea, a complete image of who Nick Fury has been now. Same with Clark Gregg's character. I thought Coulson coming back was wonderful because there has been no canonical other movie that he's been in since he died in Avengers.
Hey, now, don't pretend like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist.
Well, the MCU pretends like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, the MCU pretends like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, The Punisher, and all the Netflix stuff doesn't exist there, but it does.
No, they don't. They don't exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe until they're in it.
Well, they talk. Okay, hold on.
They can reference.
Okay,
they can be spun off of it. I will
tell you this much. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has more to do with the MCU than the Netflix stuff does because Sam Jackson was on an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay, fair. I mean,
he was in it. I mean, Nick Fury was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
So is Jamie Alexander. Like, there have been characters from the show, but like second, third, fourth, fifth tier characters have shown up in the series. But until the effects of these of the S.H.I.E.L.D. episodes go both ways, it doesn't count.
I agree.
All of this story rolls downhill. None of it rolls uphill. And so they're not truly interactive in that way. It's just that one is being built around the convenient puzzle pieces of the other, and the other one doesn't give a shit.
Well, and like you said, we're talking about Sam Jackson. The de-aging is the de-aging at this point has gotten insanely good, right?
Yep.
I mean,
so good.
If you go back and look at like original Ant-Man from a couple of years ago, like now it is insanely good. And
to be fair, from a visual effects standpoint, the lighter the skin tone is, the harder it is to make it photorealistic. The darker complexion that Sam Jackson has is easier to have the light refract through than, say, some whose skin is pretty much clear like Michael Douglas. So the fact that not only is it the most advanced it's ever been, it's also on the most forgiving skin color palette. So he was, I thought, 100% convincing, and he was in every scene that you saw him. He was de-aged. That is unprecedented. I adored it. I thought it was brilliant.
I mean, it was the whole film. It was an entire film. And up until this point, we had just seen bits and pieces. We had seen, Civil War. We saw some of it. Ant-Man 1 and 2. We saw some of it. And this,
Guardians 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot. God, I kind of like to forget that Guardians 2 happened. I know you liked it, but I kind of forget about it, honestly.
Guardians of the Galaxy film.
Sure. Well, the third one hasn't come out yet, so we don't know that.
The third one will never come out. Oh, my God.
The third one is going to come out. It's just not going to be what you want or what I want. It's going to be a shell of its former self.
I doubt it. I actually think the way that the second Hulk movie is called Avengers, and the third Hulk movie is called Avengers Age of Ultron, and the fourth Hulk movie is called Thor Ragnarok. I think that the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, we've already seen it. It's called Avengers.
I think it's
Infinity War.
I think it's still.
And the fourth one will be Avengers Endgame. And the fifth one will find some other way to incorporate some other interesting characters and become a whole other storyline. I don't think we'll ever see a third Guardians of the Galaxy film because it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. So they're going to have to find some other way to combine them.
I'm going to make you eat your words because it's going to come out. It's just not going to be very good.
I don't know. I think it'll come out and be called Fantastic Four. And we'll find those characters are in the Fantastic Four film. That's likely how they're going to find a way to use marvelous characters like Drax and Gamora.
Well, Drax is one of the ones that may not come back because Batista said, "I'm fucking not doing this."
Yeah, well, I mean,
and I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
But you can bet he would show up in another movie not called Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He'd be happy to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I don't know. Like at this whole thing, the whole thing with Disney and like James Gunn, I think is just it's like a moot point at this point. I mean, James Gunn has decided that he's going to go work for. He's decided he's going to go work for DC. That's fine. He's going to go. He's going to go take his wares to the trash can side of the street, but
all he can do is improve it, man. It's not like you can make a worse Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? But, the thing with something like Captain Marvel is... I'm curious how the character is actually going to integrate into Endgame.
Oh, well, that'll be fascinating.
Right.
Especially if we want to talk like spoilers, let's get into that mid-credit scene where we get to see the intergalactic pager back in action after Nick Fury drops it. Because I thought getting to see, the fact that Black Widow ran that scene was great because we just saw the best female-centric Marvel movie to date. And then the follow-up scene was our original female hero getting to be the prime character in the scene. And then having the captains on screen together, I just enjoyed that so much. But it was interesting to notice that her hair had changed to be more 2019 appropriate as opposed to the 1990s sort of blowout she had. So it's neat to see that she's wearing exactly the same costume, but her hair has changed and she has not aged at all. So that tells us.
But she looks a little grizzled. She looks a little like war-worn. There's something on her, right?
She's been working.
Which I'm assuming, this is me just assuming, look, they were going to make a sequel to the movie. They're making a sequel to every movie that they've made, except for Hulk, by the way, which, like you mentioned, they kind of made sequels to. But the sequel, I'm assuming, is going to take place before
Hopefully
Endgame.
It's an interquel.
Yeah, I would assume so. They've already kind of done it. They've already decided that they're going to go back and do like a prequel, not a prequel, but kind of a prequel, sure. Like, they've seen that might be where they're going, and I think that there's a clear story that they can tell with the Skrull, like, finding a home world, and I think it's also very interesting that they're not doing Secret Invasion, which is
a Kree Skrull war that we haven't seen yet. We've only kind of seen the outskirts of it in this film, so it'll be interesting to see when Captain Marvel brings the to the Kree what that's like, and hopefully they pull a Wonder Woman. And movie number 1 is way in the past. And then movie number 2 is still in the past, but not quite as in the past. And we're still able to have Brie Larson carrying the chronological story forward through the Avengers movies, but we can go back and figure out what happened in her 30 years of adventure. Because, we kind of know what Nick Fury was up to, but we have no idea what Captain Marvel's been doing. So there's so much story to tell there. And maybe there is a Secret Invasion story to be done.
I honestly think that the reason they put the Skrulls in this film the way that they did was so that they don't have to do Secret Invasion, which I'm perfectly okay with. In reality, I think it's a story that, it's interesting. It could be told really well, but it's almost a story that needs a lot more setup than they've given it yet. It needs it's like Thanos, right? It needs like its own whole thing to be set up, and showing the Skrull as sympathetic characters, I think, completely takes the wind out of the sails that they're ever going to do it, which I'm fine with because I think there's more interesting, kind of MCU spanning stories to tell than, these people are, shapeshifters. I think that there's a more interesting villain or something, a more interesting antagonist or group of antagonists to talk about than the Skrull.
I feel like, they may bring the Super Skrull into Fantastic Four at some point, and that would be neat to see. But for the most part, they can't avoid doing the Secret Invasion story if they're going to continue making these movies. You can bet 7 years from now, Secret Invasion is going to be Avengers 6. Like, they're just gonna do it. It's a question of how they're going to position and jockey it, because that's a legendary story and a legendary comic. And, what a totally different crop of heroes by then. There won't be anyone to impersonate Robert Downey Jr. because he won't be making them anymore, and there won't be anybody to be Chris Evans either. And the trick will be, who is it most believable for, and how do we make it have good emotional pathos? Because that was what they had such a great emotional payoff with the Skrulls in this one. So if they're going to do it, they can't just do basically a soap opera evil twin storyline like they did in the comics. They have to really make us care.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot more interesting stuff you could do. And again, we don't know what the other side of Endgame looks like. We're almost a month away. I don't know. I'm assuming at the end of Endgame they're going to set up whatever's next, but I feel like they might not. I feel like they might just end the film and give it kind of like a closure and then maybe the post-credit scene. But I feel like with the stakes that we're given with Endgame. I mean, Captain Marvel building into it with her coming back at the end of this film in the post-credits. Like, the point of Endgame should be to finish that story, not finish the story and start another one. The sense?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to call it Endgame, it would be nice to have them live up to that, because they have plenty of other movies to start up the momentum they need to move towards another great big storyline. And I have no doubt Kevin Feige has the next 10 years planned in that way. But, you know, they had to test the Skrulls in this to see if they would go over well. They've never had villains that looked like this that we cared about. The last time they did something like this, it was the frigging ice trolls, and we didn't really care all that much about ice giants. I mean, having Colin Fiora as one of them didn't even help. So if you're not going to be able to make the frost giants in Thor work, you might not be able to have the also completely covered up alien colored villains work, but they worked in this one. We care about them in this one. So the Skrulls, I think, were teed up nicely to be used again, and whether that's used just in Captain Marvel movies, in the Kree Skrull war story, and they keep moving down that road, or whether they decide to do Secret Invasion, I think they can go either way.
I think what we're going to see post Endgame is an integration of the characters that obviously Disney just bought, which is fine.
Yeah, we want those X-Men. We want those.
Well, did you see the preview for Dark Phoenix? I'm not sure I want those X-Men. I want X-Men.
No,
not the current form.
We don't want the Singer. No, we don't want the Singerverse X-Men.
Oh, don't say that. Don't say that name, because no one else in the Academy Award said that name. Don't you dare say that name. They don't. Yeah, he did not direct those movies, sir.
Bryan Singer's never made a passable X-Men movie ever, and so I'm delighted to think we will maybe get to see the real X-Men now.
And Simon Kinberg has never written a movie worth watching.
Oh, Kinberg? Yeah, I've never been impressed with Kinberg.
Well, he's directing. He wrote and directed the next X-Men film.
I know.
Which, by the way,
he also wrote and directed what repaired Fan Four Stick, and we saw what a repaired Fan Four Stick looked like. That was a disaster.
Yeah. The new, because they showed the preview for the new X-Men movie in front of Captain Marvel, and all I could think to myself was, you know, all Captain Marvel has to do as a movie, because I wasn't excited to see Captain Marvel. I was going to see it, obviously, so you and I could talk about it. I was just like, all Captain Marvel has to do is not be this, and I'm okay. And it wasn't.
Yeah, right?
Because that Dark Phoenix movie looks atrocious. It looks so fucking bad that I am so grateful that it is the end of the X-Men movies. I hope that Dark Phoenix blinks that entire universe out of existence and we can put it to bed and recast everyone and move on in the MCU, because I'm done with X-Men. I know everyone loves Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That's fine. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine can sit in his own kind of insular universe of the quality that we knew would come from Hugh Jackman that he's been in, but those X-Men movies need to go. They needed to go after Apocalypse. I'm surprised a fourth movie was being made. And if Disney hadn't bought Fox or 20th Century Fox, they would have kept making them. Yeah. And it's a fucking nightmare. And I'm glad that the nightmare is coming to an end, just like with Fantastic Four. And like you said, it has to all tie back into Captain Marvel, because the Skrulls are such a big part of Fantastic Four.
Yeah. And I'd love to see Fantastic Four treated in a way where we just get to meet Reed Richards, and then we get to meet the Storm, and then we get to meet Ben Grimm, and then eventually these characters become the Fantastic Four 5 movies from now. Like, there are some really great ways you can bring those characters in a different way. You can start with the Illuminati. You can do some really neat things without needing to just make another terrible Fantastic Four movie. And the X-Men, there are so many great things you can do there. And, you know, Kevin Feige, I'm sure, has some fantastic plans for these characters, and I can hardly wait to see what he does with them.
No pun intended, right? Fantastic plans for these characters?
Not at all.
I'll tell you what, though, in regards to the Skrulls and the Fantastic Four and X-Men and kind of what the expectation is going into Endgame, because past this podcast, we're going to be essentially next podcast on the MCU is going to be Endgame. So yeah, I don't think we're going to get anything about those characters in Endgame, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't think we need it either. I think we need to take the journey with the characters we know and love and have just been introduced to. I mean, Captain Marvel's going to feel like the fifth wheel in Endgame, and that's fine. That's the way that this film was positioned. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, Black Panther and Spidey have had their fifth wheel moments, and they've integrated very nicely into the Avengers. And I feel like it'll be fascinating to see where she fits in with a classic Avengers lineup, because we're dealing with Captain America in what is likely his last film. We're dealing with Iron Man in one of his last films. We're dealing with, Hulk and Thor and Black Widow and Hawkeye. We've got the original lineup. Plus, you've got War Machine. Plus, you've got Ant-Man. Plus, you've got Rocket. And you've got Captain Marvel. So it'll be interesting to see how the people we care so much about interact with the people we know way less. It'll be fascinating, because going back to Captain America and Captain Marvel, the reason she is named Captain Marvel is because Captain America encouraged her to take the name, and that Marvel wanted her to have the name. And so there's a deep, beautiful relationship there. In fact, Captain Marvel outranks Captain America in the army. And so he routinely refers to her as Sir. So there's a really cool relationship there that I hope we get to see themselves before they're no longer in the timeline together.
And I think that's again, I think it's going to be interesting to see the interplay with the characters, but I hope in Endgame they do something interesting with Captain Marvel's character, because she is the fifth wheel, and it's a pretty big film to be the fifth wheel in.
Well, and luckily she is the most powerful creature on the good guys' side. So if they do nothing with her, it will be surprising. She could kick the crap out of Thor. So it'll be nice to see what happens when all that firepower is up against Thanos.
So again, I think Captain Marvel is good, not great. For me personally, it's got that origin story feel to it that I'm over at this point, right? I mean, look, I don't think it's crazy to say we're gonna get a Fantastic Four origin story. We might get an X-Men origin story, but I know we're gonna get a Fantastic Four origin story, and I'm over them. But like, I know they're still they're gonna do Fantastic Four because they have to.
That's like saying they're gonna do a Spider-Man origin story.
Yeah, but Spider-Man's been redone too many times.
Hey, tell me how many times Spider-Man's gotten a movie in the last 20 years that gave us an origin story, and then tell me how many times Fantastic Four has gotten it, and try to make those not the same number.
It's not, because it's Fantastic Four is twice.
And how many times has Spidey gotten
like
an origin
4
story? No.
Original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, which you hate, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which technically isn't an origin story, but it kind of is. But it's an origin story done so well that nobody cares.
It's the only origin story of Miles Morales. I'm talking about how many times does Peter Parker, as he was waltzed into
Sir, they're all Spider-Man.
MCU.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you, sir?
If you're going to use the same character, there's precedent for them simply giving them no origin story whatsoever.
I say that about Fantastic Four because Fantastic Four is essentially on like the rebound. They're being put back together by Disney, and like even so much so as like the comic just came back. Like Fantastic Four is in such a state of disrepair that I think they'll do a Fantastic Four one, but I think it'll be integrated into something, hopefully, that is not like an origin story outright, because that would be the smart way to do it. And I don't even know, how do you integrate X-Men into the MCU, right? Like, there's not even there's kind of a precedent, I guess, but like, they're going to have to turn it into like a real life
X-Men
thing.
Into the MCU?
Sure.
When you're staring at a guy who has the ability to create and uncreate half of humanity, I think it's going to be very well explained. And I think the Infinity Gauntlet's going to have a lot to do with the way mutants come to be.
You think that when it's unsnapped that mutants are going to exist?
Yep.
Boy, that is a cavalier way of doing it, but at this point, like, it kind of makes sense, right?
It's clean. It is clean.
Well, I don't know if it's clean. It's less messy than it could be.
Yeah, it's cleaner than saying the X-Men have been in hiding since the 60s and you've never noticed them. Wonder Woman.
Captain Marvel. Thank God she wasn't on the planet.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
That's the stroke of genius. Stroke of genius on their part.
It's a good
but
move.
Yeah, Wonder Woman's been hiding in plain sight. Go fuck yourself, DC. Go fuck yourselves.
Yeah, she's just been dusting statues. Sure.
Yeah, she's an antiquities person. Fuck off, you fucking clowns.
I'd like to talk about Captain Marvel's ranking in origin story MCU films. Because here's my personal ranking at the top end. I would say we've got, at the very, very top, still to me, the best origin story. And I'm going to say origin stories count as long as the character's name is in the name of the movie. I'd say the top one for me is getting to watch Iron Man be made, because that to me is just the perfect origin story. Number 2, and he gets in on a technicality, is Winter Soldier, because technically it's Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So that's second favorite. My third favorite is Captain Marvel. My fourth favorite is Captain America, because I really like that movie, but the 2010 CGI is almost unwatchable. When he's got that impossible head on top of his impossible body. And then as soon as that stops happening, Red Skull, Hugo Weaving just doesn't want to be there. That movie doesn't quite do it for me. I think The Wasp, followed by Ant-Man, followed by Ultron, because I think Ultron had a great origin story, and in my eyes, he's a bit of a hero. Then Incredible Hulk, Doctor Strange, and Thor. That's my 10, with Thor bottoming out this entire series.
Well, Thor is also a bad movie, so...
It is a bad movie, much like Doctor Strange.
Well, and again, I'd like to point out, drawing parallels, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, post-Solo, Marvel is 10 years farther down the road than Disney Star Wars is with letting directors come in and give their unique and interesting vision to a movie. Captain Marvel, not so much. They had the whole 90s nostalgia thing. That's not really a unique vision, but they played up the Captain Marvel and the female empowerment angle, but they could have. Black Panther obviously did it a lot more, but Black Panther could never have been made in 2008 because Marvel was playing it super safe early on, and they're not anymore because they know that it's going to be successful. Unlike Star Wars, who fired Lord and Miller from Solo, two guys who won Oscars this year for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse because they subverted the expectations of what the Spider-Man character could be, like they were trying to do with Solo. Kathleen Kennedy fired. She did the same thing to Rogue One, and they're going to keep doing it to these Star Wars Solo standalone movies until they realize that you let someone come on and do their own unique vision and it'll be a great film. Unlike when you had Joe Johnston do Captain America, unlike when you had Kenneth Branagh do Thor, those movies don't feel like the director had any input on the film, and they didn't bring anything by cast or hiring them as the directors. And I think that that's a really sad thing because Marvel is so far down the road now that Disney with Star Wars needs to catch the fuck up.
I've got to disagree with you 100%, and this is why. Thor sucked because Kenneth Branagh got to bring what he could do, which was Shakespeare. And Captain America the Winter Soldier sucked because Joe Johnston got to bring what he was able to do, which was The Rocketeer. The true director of Marvel, you need to look at this not as a series of movies, but as a television show, because they're doing episodic television. They're just spending $250,000 an episode. The director is the showrunner, and the showrunner of the Marvel Universe is Kevin Feige. None of these directors are bringing in their own flair. Barely are they bringing in their own flair. These movies are all the same, and they have a little token here, a little token there, a bit different. Peyton Reed a little funny, and Ryan Coogler gets to bring in some cooler, more talented people we don't normally get to see to add cool production design. And Joss Whedon brought in quips, and Russo brothers are good at tight storytelling with lots of characters. But none of these people are auteurs. These are friggin' hack studio directors who are brought in perfectly by a man who knows exactly what's going on, and that's Kevin Feige. The problem with Kenneth Branagh and the problem with Joe Johnston was that they brought something to it that wasn't MCU. And now that we know what MCU is, because Iron Man and Avengers has really locked it in, nobody's out of step. The problem with Star Wars is that people are being brought in who are out of step. And Kathleen Kennedy's realizing, not in the room while they're pitching, but realizing when she sees the cut, that these are not the movies she wants. She needs to be the showrunner, and she needs to bring on directors who will do what she wants.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I don't think that they're studio hacks, but agree to disagree, as they would say. I think Kathleen Kennedy doesn't have the wherewithal to do what Kevin Feige is doing.
Well, Kevin Feige has been attached at the hip to Marvel from cinema to comic for the last 25 years.
Yeah, but Kathleen Kennedy has been in the business a lot longer than him, and there's no excuse for what she's doing.
But Kathleen Kennedy hasn't been eating and sleeping and breathing Star Wars from a decision-making point.
Sir, Kathleen Kennedy got a Kennedy Award Center award, sir. She is a humanitarian, sir. She is clearly a smart person.
Oh, I agree, and I think Kathleen Kennedy needs to believe in herself more than she does, because she takes a risk in the room when a director is pitching a war movie about Star Wars, and then when she sees it, she changes the entire thing.
I don't like war movies in the Star Wars universe. Then don't ask someone to make one, you fucking idiot. Don't ask someone to subvert the Solo character, and then when they do, go, I don't like that. Don't ask for something and then be pissed when you get it.
Yeah, like, I'm glad she went full bore with Rian Johnson's movie because I think the only time we've seen a Star Wars movie that gives this franchise longevity is what Rian Johnson did. Rian Johnson broke it. And
you are a liar.
You can keep making
Do not bring this pro-Last Jedi talk on this podcast again, sir. How dare
Suck it. Last Jedi
you,
was great.
sir, are a charlatan and a liar. I'll tell you what. I don't think Last Jedi has aged very well in the last year that it's been out.
Why is that?
We're not getting into this conversation on Captain Marvel podcast.
Okay, not on Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel was a good movie. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, that covers it for me.
Okay.
I enjoyed the heck out of this movie. Can't wait to never watch it again because these movies are
Expendable.
comic book issues.
Yeah.
I don't need to read them again. I just want the next issue.
What would you give Captain Marvel out of 5?
Out of 5, I'd give it a solid 4.
Yeah, I'd give it like a 3.5. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's not much. It's a lot of style. There's some substance to it, but let me put it this way: if we're talking about a film that's come out recently that is trying to give disenfranchised girls someone to cheer for, because again, that's what a lot of this is about. Girls don't have a superhero to cheer for, just like people of color did a superhero to cheer for. This did a better job than Wonder Woman. So in my mind, it's a massive success.
Yeah,
because Wonder Woman was a piece of garbage, and if you know,
no,
it was a piece of garbage. It has aged so poorly.
Really great.
No,
I disagree. Wonder Woman was 2 really great acts, followed by one of the worst third acts I've seen in the film.
It's about to get ruined by Kristen Wiig playing Cheetah, and I'm sorry to break it to you, but it's gonna be real bad.
I don't know. I'll believe it's bad when I see it's bad.
I come on, Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. That doesn't just smack of quality to you already? Just remember when she was making queef jokes in Ghostbusters? Oh, but you like Ghostbusters 2016. God
I like
damn
Ghostbusters.
it. God damn it.
To be pretty good.
Fuck. You know, Melissa McCarthy should play Cheetah, but like still her normal look, just with like cheetah ears on, and she can jump around, and then I would think that it's a good movie. Yeah, perfect. Fuck you.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I think Mandarin is one of the coolest villains they've ever had in the Marvel Universe, because they did something different and subversion.
I agree.
Like, it was really, really smart. So they could do something very smart with Cheetah, and you'd be eating your words, my friend.
Yeah, or it could be like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and Batman Forever and terrible.
Yep, 100%. But I'm given benefit of the doubt.
There's very little room for it's either good or bad. There's no middle ground. I mean, look, David Thewlis was cast as Ares, and that was terrible, and that was the reason the third act of Wonder Woman was bad. Can you imagine if the whole movie is like that with Kristen Wiig? I rest my case.
I think the reason that movie was bad wasn't because of the casting. It was really because of the story. The third act wasn't served because the story didn't tee up the third act in a way that gave you emotional investment. And they could have kept David Thewlis. David Thewlis has a wonderful voice. They could have kept his voice as Ares and hidden his face behind a more comic book accurate look. And they could have made a third act look better, but it wouldn't have made it emotionally play better. That's because the whole movie made a bad third act.
Yeah, I have seen Wonder Woman one other time since it came out, and I would watch this movie every day of my life, then watch Wonder Woman again, period. I'm not kidding. Captain Marvel was it was a better movie. It was more fun. It had a sense of fun. That's the thing that the DC universe doesn't have. Even when it's even when Aquaman came out.
Aquaman had fun?
I think Aquaman had fun, but doesn't know how to spell fun because it's so stupid.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like Aquaman is quite possibly one of the stupidest movies I've seen in the last year.
You don't reckon I was playing the drums?
From Momoa, who has no ability to act other than grunting or speaking a made-up language, to Amber Heard, who can't act, period, to James Wan.
No, Amber Heard was some kind of weird robot.
To James Wan, who is... Like, I don't know what he was thinking, because that was a director for hire movie. It really was. You look at a film like Aquaman, and you look at a film like Captain Marvel, it's like night and day. Like, what are you guys doing?
It made $1 billion. It can't be wrong.
Yeah, okay, and Avatar is still the highest grossing movie of all time.
And the second highest grossing movie of all time is Titanic, and that movie's a stroke of genius. So
yes, I can't tell if you're being honest or sarcastic.
No. Honestly, Titanic is a brilliant film.
Are you just trying to get James Cameron to hire you?
No. Honestly, I think James Cameron's a dick. I think he's incredibly talented, and everything I've heard about that guy is that he's a nightmare to work with. That's why it's so good. Hollywood is littered with bad people to work with who make great art, whether they're like legally bad or just
legally. I like I had to say that. Legally bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
Bryan Singer is a child molester. Legally bad.
He's legally bad, whereas James Cameron is just like a demanding dude, and people don't like necessarily having to work with that. I mean, people sure as hell didn't like working with Hitchcock for similar reasons, or Orson Welles. Like, some people are just jerks.
Well, Hitchcock and James Cameron
art.
have a lot in common, namely they're misogynistic turds.
Sure, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah. Well, anyways, well, let's take a quick break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
Nobody is safe from the man from Hong Kong.
Listen, there's a Chinese cop in town. He's beginning to annoy me. Yeah, I think he should meet with a slight accident.
Jimmy Wong Yu is the man from Hong Kong. A furious arsenal of martial arts, with his sights set on smashing organized crime.
In my country, Caroline, we have a sport. We take the giant praying mantis, put him in the wooden cage, and make him fight for his life with his own kind. I thought you would enjoy such a sport.
You and Jack Wilton in a wooden cage. He's a very dangerous man.
George Lazenby is Jack Wilton. Gunrunner, dope peddler, ruthless czar of international evil.
I've never met a Chinese yet that didn't have a yellow streak.
East meets West in a head-on clash with no holds barred. Golden Harvest, who made Bruce Lee a box office smash, have joined with Australia's action specialists to produce a death-defying spectacle that staggers the senses. The man from Hong Kong knows no rules. Everyone he runs across is never quite the same again.
I understand the gunman is dead. How did that happen? I killed him. Really? Well, in that case, you deserve a cigar. Thank you. I don't smoke.
Tell me, Inspector, do you often take white girls to bed?
Only on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
This is nice.
What did you expect? Acupuncture?
So do yourself a favor and answer a few questions. Yeah, and I love you too.
This is Australia, mate, not 55 days at Peking.
Hey, don't give me any shit.
Provoke him at your peril.
I want that lunatic stopped.
Nothing stands in his way. For long. Nobody's safe from the man from Hong Kong.
That's right, on the next Culture Cast, we're going to be striking back up with Mike White March, talking about The Man from Hong Kong, a movie that has nothing to do with Captain Marvel, and is so much that it has cast of people that you've probably never heard of, and it's not a Marvel movie. However, until then, my co-host won't be joining me on that one. Matt won't be joining me on that one because it's not a DC movie or a Star Wars movie or a Marvel movie, which is perfectly fine.
Sorry.
Matt knows his lane and how to stay in it. Vroom, vroom.
Yep.
Until then, where can people find you, Matt?
Well, you can find me at mattcampagna.com, but you can also find a lot of the films I've been curating at highballtv.com. It's a film festival Netflix, essentially. A place where you can catch movies that have been at Cannes, at TIFF, at Telluride, at Sundance, big festivals and small. Highballtv.com. It's a pretty awesome spot for movie lovers.
And by the way, since Filmstruck is gone, the places for highbrow film are slowly dwindling.
Yeah, and we have felt that pain from a lot of people. And the Criterion Collection has a new site coming out in a couple of months, or I think next month. So that'll be exciting for people who like older movies in their collection. That'll be pretty great. We have some Criterion titles on highballtv.com if you want to watch them now. But we love that there's a few places that you can see movies, because losing Filmstruck was a real blow for cinephiles.
It was a real kick in the pants, because that's where I went to watch all the Criterion stuff. Not that I have any problem buying Criterion stuff. That's probably the only Blu-rays I buy anymore are Criterion Collection, but
then you have to get out of your chair.
No, you have to have money to buy them with. One must have money to buy physical media with. And as opposed to spending 30 on one, I could spend 10 on all of them. But which, it's fine. It's unfortunate that Filmstruck is gone, because I think last year when we did Mike White March, like every single movie was on Filmstruck. And then when we did Samurai September, all those movies were on Filmstruck. But it's a moot point because Filmstruck is gone now. And there are less and less independent streaming platforms. My current favorite one, I haven't been on Highball yet, so I can't speak to it, is Shudder, but I'm also a genre fan of horror, so of course I'm going to love Shudder. And they're doing
Shudder's really cool for that.
They're doing God's work over there on Shudder. As for me,
check out highballtv.com. You may find some movies on there that you noticed you haven't watched in a while, or that you maybe have never seen. There's some pretty great classics on Highball TV too.
But do they have any of your movies on there?
You sure bet they do.
I was about to say, I hope so. Speaking of calm pure, sir.
Of my movies, and Highball TV has Tactical Girls on it as well, a series that I made a few years ago, and we'll have my new movie when it comes out, Renaissance. It'll be on there as well.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter at CultureStash. You can find the podcast on Twitter at CultureCast and at CultureCast.com. Big thanks to you, Matt, as always. I know it's kind of infrequent. The last time we spoke was proper, quote unquote, was for Venom, but I think this year we've got a lot in between. Like we've got something every couple months, it seems like.
Yeah, these Marvel movies are coming in hot in 2019, so don't worry, we'll be chatting more.
I got Endgame, Shazam, and Spider-Man, because Shazam comes out soon, and then I think there's a little bit of a lull later in the year. I think maybe Wonder Woman comes out, and then we have obviously Star Wars Episode 9. Don't
forget that demented-looking Joker movie.
Oh yeah, and then also the X-Men Dark Phoenix movie. And then the X-Men horror movie, and then what's the subtitle for Star Wars Episode 9? Retconning Star Wars Episode 9. We retconned the last film.
Hardly.